conference, I looked at rhythm, and then the moment I see rhythm, it's a concept that we all can easily identify with, because in our lives, we go through the dependence on many rhythms. We can feel it. We can't see it all the time, but we can feel it. We can perceive it. It is intangible, but we rely on it for maintaining ourselves, maintaining our interactions as human beings in the world itself. So rhythm is something that is very close to our hearts also. But as scholars, we don't always work on rhythm as a theoretical, as a methodological notion, and that kind of attracted my attention to talk about rhythm as a novice, actually, because I know a lot of people who are on this call today have a lot of expertise on rhythm, but I kind of I'm trying to make some initial efforts as a scholar and a scientist, as a human being, to understand rhythm in a limited way, but also apply rhythm to the work that I have been doing on socio-ecological system and well-being. So first, I will talk about a little bit on what is the socio-ecological system. Of course, socio-ecological systems are integrated systems of humans and the environment. So on one side of it, it's there is the social components, the human dimensions. The other side of it is covered with ecological and environmental processes and structures and functions. So in a socio-ecological system, both these components are integrated, they interact, and therefore they don't function as either a society or ecosystem, but they combine forces to function as one, and that is known as the socio-ecological system. And it emanates from the thought that humans and the natural environment that hosts them are inherently linked. And the moment we make any effort to disconnect the humans from the environment, or the environment from the humans, it becomes arbitrary. It becomes an artificial effort, which leads to really negative consequences in terms of well-being and happiness and all those outcomes that we desire. Just as humans have the ability to impact biophysical processes or the ecological processes, biophysical processes or biophysical factors have the ability to influence human. And you can stretch it to say that it has the ability to influence the levels of happiness and well-being. So it is also understood as a coupled, interdependent, and co-evolutionary process whereby the social is integrated with the environment. So that's the socio-ecological system. Why do we engage in socio-ecological system processes is, as I already mentioned, is to expect outcomes about well-being. And you can say also happiness. Again, I have not done a lot of work on happiness, but I have done some work, modest work on well-being. So I'll use well-being more than happiness here, but there are synergies between well-being and happiness, in all societies. So the way well-being has been addressed in literature is that it is a state of being with others. So it is not something that kind of can be achieved alone. It is a state of being with others where human needs are met, where one can act meaningfully to pursue one's goals, and where one enjoys a satisfactory quality of life. So it's many things, but it is a state of being. And the state of being can be described in many ways, and I'll come to that in a few minutes. But it is often talked about that well-being can be achieved in material, in relational, and in subjective ways, and I'll come to that in a few minutes. However, in the work on well-being, there has been a lot of focus on the social, the economic, the human dimensions of well-being in all these three areas: material, subjective, and relational. There has been little recognition of the potential role of ecological and environmental factors in how well-being can be achieved. There is a growing body of literature now, but there has been still limited work in terms of connecting the ecological processes with how we can achieve well-being as human beings. So there is now some work that progresses towards defining what does it mean to have social ecological well-being in our work on socio-ecological systems, but the outcome of which is well-being or happiness. That brings me to the third component. Which is rhythm. So when we look at socio-ecological systems and then we expect to obtain happiness or well-being through our engagement in the ecological or socio-ecological processes, we often forget that there is some inherent, invisible, driving forces, motivations that exist in that process of our engagement in socio-ecological systems. And for the purpose of the talk today and the purpose of the conference, where rhythm is the dominant topic, I would like to use rhythm to explain that invisible force, to explain that what motivates us to keep engaged in social ecological system in our pursuit to obtain a well-being is the force of rhythm. And as I said, I'm not an expert on rhythm, but an initial exploration about rhythm exposes many meanings of rhythm. And of course, it comes from music, arts, painting, and the humanities. Different perspectives exist, just to read some of them out, so from a perspective of music, rhythm can be understood as placement of sounds in time, and the temporal dimension becomes important, and the placement of that sound and the organization of that sound becomes important, and rhythm helps us do that. And just think of all of these definitions of rhythm in connection with the ecological, social-ecological processes that can generate well-being. From an art perspective, it is a relationship between elements that creates a sense of harmony. So harmony is important in terms of how well-being can be obtained from socio-ecological processes. From similarly arts and painting and other kinds of creative perspectives, rhythm can be understood as movement or the visual flow within a certain piece. So the piece could be a socio-ecological system, and if you see how it is structured and what are the flows that leads to different outcomes, such as well-being, it can be seen as rhythm. So there are many ways to understand rhythm, but one definition that caught my attention is that rhythm is a powerful medium to stimulate communication and social interaction. And we are all engaged in those kind of processes. We are all engaged in communication, verbal, non-verbal communication, different types of communication. And what leads that communication process is social interactions. Of course, we are forced to engage in social interactions because we are social animals, as Aristotle would say. But social interaction is something that is also reflected in the notion of rhythm. And further, what caught my attention in rhythm as an initial, person, interested, with my initial interest in the notion of rhythm and its application to socio-ecological systems, understanding, and well-being are the 5 key components of rhythm, and they are pulse, tempo, meter, accent, and subdivision. And just briefly, pulse signifies, and when I read this out, you can think of how these attributes of rhythm might reflect in a social ecological process that can produce well-being and happiness. Pulse signifies the constant underlying beat or the force that is speedy, speedy and consistent. So that is rhythm. It continues consistently, provides the lifeline of a system. Tempo is, of course, the pace and the speed, because anything that functions, for example, the socio-ecological system has a tempo. And that's the rhythm in the socio-ecological system, because it determines the pace and the speed of things within the system. Metal is the regularly recurring patterns. Patterns are so essential to our life, processes. Without the patterns, the diversity is lost. Without the patterns, the innovation is lost, because new patterns create new innovations and opportunities to kind of survive and continue. Accent is reflected in some bits or elements of social ecological system are being emphasized more than the others. Some elements or some factors becomes really important given a certain circumstances at a certain point in time. So accent is important and it comes from rhythm. And the last one is subdivision, which represents the diversity, the variety, the variations in the process itself. And if we look at these 5 attributes of rhythm, and there could be many more, and experts will tell us that, they really reflect the nuanced process of social ecological systems and how the social ecological systems are influenced or driven by pulse, tempo, meter, and accent and subdivision to produce well-being, to produce happiness. So this is a really novel way of connecting different concepts to find new ways of doing things, to innovate, new outcomes of social ecological systems research that could effectively lead us to the domain of happiness and well-being. Having said that, I'm going to focus in the next couple of minutes. I'm going to focus on linking social ecological systems with rhythm, especially rhythm in the sense that I have explained to you in the past few minutes. When we come to social ecological systems, of course, I told you that this is an integrated system of humans and the ecosystem of the environment, but it has also different attributes. And I will talk about a few attributes, and then I will link those attributes to the notion of rhythm and how rhythm is a helpful notion or concept to engage or to dive deeper into social ecological systems research, of course, with the objective of arriving at well-being and happiness. So the first attribute of social ecological system is to understand, of course, it is as social ecological processes as a system itself, but also to see that there are subsystems, and also to see that there are different components. So when we say social-ecological system, we are combining social or the human as a subsystem with ecological or the environmental as another subsystem. So these 2 subsystems are linked in multiple ways to create the social ecological system. And then what defines these subsystems are various components. For example, in the human or the social subsystem, culture, economy, politics, institutions, all of these things define the social domain. And similarly, if you look at the ecological domain, geochemical processes, physical, biological, hydrological features define the ecological subsystem. And then you combine these 2 subsystems to create the social ecological system. And that process of combining is actually facilitated by the notion of rhythm. And rhythm helps us in understanding how these systems and subsystems and the components, all the components in both the subsystems that I talked about, are integrally linked in a continuous process of complex interactions and how they influence each other, in a given point in time. Okay? So, and then the second attribute then that follows is to look at linkages, relationships, and connections as another set of attributes of a socio-ecological system. Linkages refers to the numerous ways this subsystem, the social and the ecological, and all the components are linked. So, how they're connected, how they're linked. It also helps us to understand that they are, both held equal importance levels. So not one subsystem or not one component of the socio-ecological system is more important than the other. They are held at equal levels of importance, and then they interact. So there is no one component that receives more preference than the other. Relationship is something that defines the relations between services that the ecosystem can provide, and often we call it ecosystem services, and the opportunities that are resulting from ecosystem processes, and what contributions they make to human well-being, because we derive ecological resources, ecological services or opportunities to harness well-being. So how do you do without compromising the long-term productivity of the ecological system is a tough task. So relationship defines the relationships between ecological services and human well-being. And then the third element of that is connections between people and the resource environment, with numerous implications for ecosystem change and marginalization of communities that are striving to achieve well-being in their different aspects of life. In some of my early work with my co-authors, we have looked at connections and disconnections in social ecological systems, whereby we have defined disconnections as the physical, psychological, economic, and political separation of people from their environment. And of course, when that happens, this has numerous implications for broadly well-being and happiness, but it results in loss of livelihood, loss of institutions, loss of rights, and privileges and identity of people, but also at the same time, loss of the fine connections of humans with environment. And the role of rhythm in linkages and relations and connections is reflected in how it helps to nurture, maintain, and promote these linkages and relationships and connections, and ensures no disruptions or disconnections are happening in social ecological systems. So that's the contribution of rhythm in understanding linkages, relationships, and connections. The third attribute of social ecological system is the scale and the levels. And the scale is reflected in the spatial, temporal, quantitative, analytical dimensions used to study and measure a phenomenon. So we can study anything by looking at the scale. And scale is very clear. If you take a scale and then if you look at 1 to 12 inch, and then each inch in between becomes a level. So the levels are unit of analysis located at different positions on a scale. So scale and levels are very important, in our interactions in how socio-ecological systems prosper. Socio-ecological systems, therefore, are scale dependent, and they are organized across vertical and horizontal scales. And the role of rhythm here is that it helps define the boundaries, the limits, the scope, and the units, which are all elements of scale and levels. The integrity of scale and levels and the both scale and levels together is triggered and sustained by the force of rhythm in a socio-ecological system. The fourth element is drivers. And drivers, of course, are natural human-induced factors that directly or indirectly cause a change, and these are very, very impactful in how change can take place in a socio-ecological system. These are multi-level. These can be external, internal. They can be proximate. They can be underlying or very systemic in nature. And again, there is an important role of rhythm here, because rhythm, if you think of rhythm in the way I explained to you with all those 5 attributes, rhythm in socio-ecological system is the force useful to counter the negative impacts of the drivers and welcome and receive positive drivers and therefore be able to create happiness or well-being. And then the fifth and the last element of socio-ecological system is defined as feedback and interactions. Because there are so many things that are connected in a socio-ecological system to produce well-being. There are feedbacks, two-way feedbacks between the social and the ecological subsystems, all the components. So the nested structure of SES, or the socio-ecological system, allows for these feedbacks to happen in a two-way process. Feedbacks lead to structural interactions between the environment and the people, and the role of rhythm is to ensure that reconciliation between the needs of society and the environmental limits relies on meaningful and dynamic interactions between nature and society. So, so we're finding that rhythm as a force within social ecological systems has manifold activities and manifold responses, and therefore manifold contributions to how well-being can be produced. In the last 5 minutes that I have in my talk, what I'm going to do is I'm going to now link well-being with rhythm, and these are all initial reflections, as I already mentioned. I have already mentioned that well-being is a state of being for different things. How we exist as human beings and possess well-being, but possess well-being not as single individuals, but possess well-being in relation to others also. So. Well-being is often seen in three different ways. The material well-being is something that refers to the tangible and the physical needs of human beings. You can talk about, in a community, the income, the livelihoods, the fish they catch, the products they bring from the forest. These are all material aspects of well-being, and they have the ability to produce material well-being. Because they are tangible, they are visible, and they can produce tangible, outcomes such as income. The second one is the subjective well-being, which is something that lies at an individual feelings and gives meaning to the personal and the inner values of an individual. So this is the core value that we possess. How we think about our own lives, how we make meaning of our lives is driven by inner forces. And that's the subjective aspect of well-being, because that inner force defines and propels us to look at well-being in multiple ways. So subjective well-being is a force that guides us in our pursuit to achieve well-being. And then the third element is very basic, because it is the relational well-being. We can't function as human beings alone, because we are not tuned to function as single individuals, as standalone units. We always interact. We always define ourselves in relation to the neighbor, to the next person. So the relational well-being addresses the relationships and the interactions. People rely on to derive well-being by using what they already have in relation to others. And there are really numerous connections with the notion of rhythm, because rhythm defines how well-being within one set of well-being, within one's domain of well-being. For example, either material, subjective, or relational can take place, or how well-being is distilled by the churning of or between material, subjective, and relational well-being, and how that interaction between the material, the subjective, and the relational takes place is guided by the force of rhythm. And you can go back to all the 5 attributes of rhythm that I have talked about. And that brings me to the last segment of my talk, which is to summarize and to leave all of us with a few reflections about how rhythm plays out in the context of a socio-ecological system that help us produce well-being, that help us produce happiness. If I reflect back in the last 15-20 minutes of my talk about socio-ecological systems, well-being, the various aspects of rhythm, it kind of pushes me to think about rhythm in many different ways. I can see that rhythm is something that that reflects patterns, variations. It reflects uniqueness. It talks about process. It talks about diversity. It talks about various changes that are taking place in a place. It provides the idea for how sequence matters, how flow matters, how structure matters, how time matters, and what is the essential role of duration, repetition, negotiations, relationships, and how harmony can be created, and many more. So it is really a diversified notion that propels the energy to engage in all of these terms that can define the way we engage in socio-ecological systems, but also to achieve but at the same time, rhythm is about sound, but also rhythm is about silence. So these essential characteristics are also very typical to the socio-ecological system. I can hear sound in a socio-ecological system, but I can also be in silence in a socio-ecological system. So rhythm is very effective. Two messages before I conclude. I would like to take this forward in my future work to think about rhythm as a metaphor that helps to reflect on how we can characterize socio-ecological realities in the entire socio-ecological system and to therefore realize well-being and happiness. I would also try to take rhythm as a methodological and a theoretical approach that can provide novel directions and interdisciplinary platform for future research on well-being and happiness. There is a lot of prospect in combining rhythm in social ecological systems research, and I'm looking forward to engaging more in that pursuit. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Pradeep. Excellent timing. So you are just in time. So we have 10 minutes to discuss. So I would invite participants to put their questions, or you can also type them, but better to ask questions. Switch on your video, or even then just audio, you can ask questions.
Good evening and good morning, sir. This is Ankur.
Hi, Ankur.
So, I just wanted to ask, I think we have enough talks related to climate change, at least in discourse, if not in action. So, do you agree we are not putting the same importance to the marginalized people who are attached to these highly vulnerable socio-ecological systems like Sundarbans, and which, if given due importance, can play a most crucial role in our fight to save this planet, and obviously its well-being?
Yes, I think, the role of all, stakeholders is important in any given process. You discount one particular group of stakeholders and the desired results or outcomes are not achieved. And in that process, the role of people who are at the core of things, so the resource dependent people that you're mentioning were often marginalized, were often dispossessed of many things in their life. Their role becomes very important. I always go back to the work of Naren and et al. They did a work on poverty whereby they said, how do you understand poverty? And then they went to 80 countries and to find out, what does poverty mean to the people that are going through poverty? And they created 3 volumes of work. In the first volume, in the opening paragraph, they say, we have 1.5 billion poverty experts in this world, and these are not poverty experts that sit in Washington, D.C. in the United Nations or the World Bank. And who did they refer to by that? They refer to the 1.5 billion people who are going through poverty experiences in their daily lives. Therefore, they are the real experts to talk about poverty, and therefore they are the people who can provide novel ways to deal with poverty, not people who are outside the context. So yes, involvement of the marginalized people, involvement of the people who are going through the process of marginalization, like poverty, are the best people to not only talk about it, not only resist about it, but also to provide response mechanisms and ways to deal with it. And those could be the real approach to deal with not only climate change, but also various other social and economic and ecological adversities.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Please go ahead. Some more questions. Okay, so I have one question for Professor Naik. So you have some publications on the well-being, that is linking social well-being and intersectionality to understand gender relations in dried fish value chains. So what do you mean by social well-being by your terms? What do you mean by social well-being?
Yeah, I mean, two responses to that. In IIT Kharagpur, there are, people that are working. I know Jenia Mukherjee, Priyadarshi Patnaik, and their team are working on dried fish as part of a global project that we are all, members. Well-being is one of the, components of that particular project, but also other projects that we work together between Waterloo and IIT. Well-being, as I explained, is a combination of various things. Of course, it has material dimension, it has a relational dimension, it has, a subjective dimension. That means it has dimensions that are very, very visible and tangible, but at the same time, it has dimensions that are very invisible and intangible at the same time. But what, in not only in my work, but many scholars have started working is on the notion of social-ecological well-being, because it started with human well-being, social well-being, or just the notion of well-being, and there's a rich set of literature coming out of the University of Bath in the UK, where they came up with the definition that I gave you, that it's a state of being, and with others. But at the same time, what is missing from those initial definition is this notion that that state of being with others also include, the non-humans in the way we can derive well-being. So it is not only humans that seek well-being or achieve well-being, but it is also the non-humans. What are the implications? The implications are this. The first implication is that we can derive well-being both from social processes and ecological processes, and the combination of both social and ecological processes. That's the social ecological systems perspective. The second perspective is that as much as humans want their well-being, the non-humans, include animals, and the nature also has a component of well-being. So, and they are linked. Unless there is well-being in the natural system, there is not going to be any well-being in the human system, and vice versa. Okay, so these definitions are expanding, and my work on well-being actually is focusing on the later part of what I said. So more, taking into the integrated understanding of well-being in the social ecological systems perspective, where not only look at how humans are entitled for well-being, but also at the same time ecosystems, the environment, the climate, these are all also entitled to have their own well-being, of course, with consequences that can have positive impact on both.
Thank you, Professor. So we have 3 minutes to go. I think we can take one more question at least. So anybody wants to ask a question? So anyone want to ask a question? Please go ahead. If no one is, then I will ask the second question.
Please.
You have something writing about commonalization and decommonalization. So what do you mean by this?
Okay, yeah,
making something common or not making something out of it. So what is it?
I mean, it's related.
I'm trying to learn actually, because as much as possible, we have got 3 minutes from you.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that you asked that question, because many of these concepts that we work, as researchers often are connected, and then the commonization and decommonization is related to the commons theory, which is about collective action. And commons are often defined as identifiable, resources, with identifiable, resources with interdependent users. So, for example, the Sundarbans as a commons have interdependent users. So these users are not single users; these are interdependent users, and therefore, the moment one user extracts more, it impacts the well-being of the other, users. If I take more, then you, as an interdependent user on the same resource, receive a negative, impact. So. Commons is this novel concept where we see how human beings are tied with each other in collective action to manage and nurture and interact with different commons resources itself. Using that concept in a recent book, I came up with this idea of commonization and decommonization, whereby commonization is defined as everything that could happen to push a commons or a collective action entity towards being more commons, like good institutions, good relationships, better well-being, good levels of happiness. These are all can define a strong commonization process. But at the same time, if there are drivers that are impacting, like climate change, like the COVID-19 pandemic, bad policies and other things, social conflicts, all of these things have the ability to push this common or collective action processes towards more decommonization or losing those characteristics fast and furiously. So therefore, they lose their characteristics as commons. So what is the pursuit here? So the pursuit here is, how do you balance this in a way that we as human beings can move more towards being in a process of commonization, building the harmony in the rhythms notion, than going more towards decommonization, which is the disruption of the harmony, therefore disruption of the rhythm itself. If I had more time, I would go into deeper, but this is the basic notion about.
Thank you very much, Professor Patnaik. I think, Professor Pratik, I am very impressed, and we hope that we will have some more interactions with you. Kindly visit our Reiki Center of Happiness when you will be here, and give some talks or maybe some participate in some course. We'll request you that. So thank you. So anything else, Archie or Professor Patnaik, you won't like to do anything now, or we'll have the next talk?
Thank you, both Professor Naik and Professor Rautre. Very insightful talk, and we are feeling so happy that this word rhythm has kind of triggered a lot of very exciting possible explorations in different fields. Even in the field of where I'm working, I have suddenly realized that there are other things to which it's getting linked. And this is kind of working as a trigger, and we hope that it leads to some good publications, both from the conference and beyond that. We are just waiting right now for Professor Pankaj Panwar, the next speaker, to join. I'm just coordinating that. So we'll just wait for a few minutes and I request Ankur to please play the animation as we wait. Yes, great.
Sir, Professor
Yes.
Panwar is with us.
Yes, great. So, over to.
Can I just say a
Yes,
word
please.
of thanks to all of you for the kind invitation, and I can't express how enriching it was for me to go through that process of thinking about rhythm and connecting that with my work. And definitely, I'm looking forward to writing more with people like Priyadarshi and his team, taking these ideas further. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pradeep. So over to Professor Rautrai and Professor Panwar.
Hi, Professor. You're welcome. Welcome to this talk. I'll just briefly introduce Professor Pankaj Panwar, who is the principal of Kala Bhavan Vishwabharati University. So each talk is scheduled here for about 45 minutes. So being in rhythm, being in sync, spontaneity and creativity. Professor Panwar did his fine art training from Kala Bhavan Vishwabharati Shantiniketan, then MS University Baroda and the Royal College of Arts London. Recipient of several awards and scholarships including National Scholarship and Junior Research Fellowship Government of India, Henry Moray Fellowship UK, Charles Wallace Grant UK, French Government Scholarship, Nomura Award, Nomura International London, National Award Lalit Kala Academy, Government of India. Pankaj's sculpture explores the relationship and tensions between man and nature. Shantiniketan is his inspiration and its environment and atmosphere reflected in his work. So Professor Pankaj Panwar, it is over to you. Kindly, you have 45 minutes. You can allow within that about 10 to 15 minutes of question interaction. So podium is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And can you hear me?
Yes, you are clearly visible, audible.
Thank you everyone, and thank you for inviting me on this international conference cum workshop, Rhythm of Happiness, organized by Reiki Center of Excellence for Science of Happiness, IIT Kharagpur, and School of Languages and Linguistics, Jadavpur University. It's a wonderful opportunity, and I thank everyone, and especially Professor Patnaik for inviting me. This is such a vast topic, speaking on rhythm, and I think which is the core of any activity if we want to do it in a meaningful way. So I thought to give my title to my work. Mainly, I will focus on my visual artworks. I will focus on some of the artworks of the Western artists to make you understand about rhythm, what is rhythm in visual art, sculpture, painting, and other forms of art. Rhythm is equal to in sync. What I mean in sync is you are no different. You are connected to yourself and the rest. That leads to, when you are in sync with yourself, I believe, and I mean, most of my things are experiential. What I practice, what I teach, what I do. So being in sync, it leads to spontaneity, and that spontaneity leads to your creative work, creative ideas. And that is the core of everything. Being sync means also, I was hearing the talk of Professor Chetri about mindfulness, and all these meditations, yoga, or the various forms of arts like music, painting, other things leads to actually to find your rhythm. So it's a huge topic. It's like being in rhythm through these techniques by painting, meditations, and yoga leads to identify and come into zone of your rhythm. And also the rhythm leads to your much better performance. And of course, and that ultimately leads to your happiness, joyfulness, whatever you call it. So, and this is one of the things I think is a core idea of Rabindra Tagore, where I'm teaching in Shantiniketan. In the beginning, when I was from Lucknow, and I was struggling in my school days in general lifestyle. And when I come to Shantiniketan, suddenly I felt the difference. And that difference was that whole concept of Rabindranath's, how to allow a young mind, young children to learn from nature. And from nature means you are in the surrounding of nature, which helps you in a big way to being in sync with the rest. And also that in presence of nature helps you to find your deeper self. Maybe you can call it your consciousness. And these two things together are a very useful thing and very essential thing in any creative artist or any creative practice. So it is a huge subject. So I will start off with my slide presentations, and in the process, I will keep talking about different kinds of rhythm, and I will keep the speaking. So I will start that. Share screen. Yeah. There you go. Full screen.
Yes, it is visible.
Yeah.
You can do presentation mode so that it will be a little bit bigger.
Presentation. Okay. Is it okay?
It's okay, sir. It's fine.
So I will start with a presentation of some of the work. I chose some work of the Western masters, Western artists, Indian artists, and at the end I will show some of my works. And I have chosen works which is sometimes easy to make people understand of what different kinds of rhythms are in visual art. It is endless, but for our understanding, I have chosen some because of the restriction of time. Okay, so I start. You can see this. This is a work of one of the modern master, sculptor.
Sir, actually, I think the slide is not moving. Can you reshare it?
Sorry?
The slide.
Uh,
Are you moving your slides? You can just...
The shared slide is not moving. Can you reshare it? It sometimes happens on Zoom.
No, I will move like this, and this.
No, you are moving. The shared screen is not moving. Can you just unshare and reshare?
Okay.
You just need to stop sharing and then reshare again.
Okay.
Yeah, can you move the slides so that it is moving or not? We'll see. You are in one slide now. It is not moving. You have to go to second slide. So
Yeah.
Is
Is it okay?
no, second slide. You have not gone. You are in the first slide.
Yeah.
I think you can go to the presentation mode. Sir, you share again. Okay, so go to the presentation mode.
Yes.
Down right, you see there is or you can see in the slideshow there is presentation. Now it is moving. This one, you can press that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think this is good.
This is good. It is moving. Okay.
Yes, I will check now. Yeah, is it moving now for you?
Yeah, now you are in slide 2, right?
Yeah.
Slide 3.
So this is now slide 3. Is it okay? You can see that?
Slide 3, it has not come.
This is the
slide.
one.
No.
Sir, you try to present it. In the left side, you can see that is 68%. Beside that, there is a button. You just press that one. To your right hand button, yes, but
first present it and then you can share the screen.
no, I think we can also do it from here. Let me see.
First you can go to presentation mode and then you can share the screen which shows the presentation.
Yeah, fine.
The other option is you can share the slides with us. We can present it for you.
Now you can see.
You'll have to use the share the screen now. You have to share the screen now. Now that Professor Panwar, if you can just, as you speak, if you can just share the PPT with me, I will share it. You can just upload and share it with me. There seems to be some technical issue. Then I can do that. I can present it.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, sure. We are waiting. No issues.
I'm sending it to Pinaki. He will forward it.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
If Pinaki is there, Pinaki can also share it.
Pinaki is fine.
Pinaki, are you there?
Sorry for this.
No, absolutely not.
Press only F5.
Archie, can you make Pinaki a co-host so that he can present? I think we only if the screen is moving, Professor Panwar, you can just go to slide 3 and just let us know. We can know at least whether it's moving or not.
I'm moving for slides 3 now.
No, we are not able to see that change. That's for some reason the screen is freezing from your end. So if Pinaki has got the slides, we will ask him to play it.
Sir, I think you share your email ID directly in the chat box, because I think Pinaki, I'm not finding him here.
Yeah, Pinaki is there. Pinaki is very much there. He has been made a co-host. Right. Just there is absolutely no problem. These things happen, and one of the best way to negotiate it is to just relax a little and have a little chat, and we can take it.
Okay. So let's talk something, and then I will focus on my work only. So I'll leave the Western or other section. So basically, when we were talking about the rhythm and happiness, I mean, these are one of the two things very essentially, things which in any form of art, visual art, music are there. And other thing is, as I said, when I came to Shantiniketan, if you see the whole idea of Rabindra, I want to put it in a very nutshell, it's about how to bring the students in them with the rest. And then, that process helps you to, this whole journey of learning, unlearning, and education and various forms. So this was the one together, and this subject is so core subject for practice. And just a second.
Yeah.
Pinaki has got it, so I think he's going to share it with you, and then I will move accordingly.
Sir, you have to stop sharing now.
Sir, can you stop sharing your screen? Great. Now Pinaki can do it, I think.
So, despite this errors, I'm a little sorry about that. These things, this I would say experts, and more or less this technology we have learned during this pandemic time.
I would just like to add, Professor Panwar, that the machines have their own minds. Yeah. They don't go by whatever we do. We have been also facing a lot of issues at IIT for the last couple of days.
Yeah. So, I mean, I saw this thing in the highest level in one of the conference where President of Russia and and Western countries were sitting and the link got dislinked. So then I thought, this is everybody specific to developing country, but this technology has this side of, it can be. But anyway, this is.
That's very true. And because it must be an image file and it would be a little heavy.
One thing I would like to give you an example of my journey as a student when I came from Lucknow to Shantiniketan, and when I start learning in Shantiniketan with this new environment and atmosphere. So what kind of feeling I had was, when I was studying in other schools in Lucknow, it was the whole teaching was so synthetic to the word, the nearest to it comes. And when I came to Shantiniketan, the whole teaching became so organic. So that is also a kind of a relationship you can build. It's so rhythmic. And I felt what I felt as a student, that if you put a duckling into the water, it becomes so natural to swim. So the whole education, if you make it like in this kind of in sync with the rest, the whole education, whole learning process becomes like a way of enjoyment and happiness. So this is one of the fundamental thing I felt. So I hope Pinaki is able to help you in this.
Yeah, we are just connecting. Just give us a moment.
Yeah, please. Thank you. He used the rhythm in a way that he made there is no distinction between the sculpture and the pedestal and its base. So all together he designed in such a beautiful way. Normally what happens is there is a sculpture and there is a pedestal, but he designed the pedestal is also part of the whole thing. So whole thing in a rhythmic form. This is a very famous, this is Branco scene. Next. This is another work you can see. This is whole exercise is rhythm. You can call it harmony. You can call it design. And these are the most fundamental in any form of art. Next. I have chosen some different examples, some examples which are very complex in their nature and in construction. This is a very renowned work of Pablo Picasso, Guernica. And you can see how complex the whole design is, the whole arrangement is such a rhythmic design, but it is a very complex composition with a very heavy theme about that bombardment in that Spanish city, and this is also a great work reflecting a different kind of rhythm, also reflecting a personality of Picasso. This is very interesting to find artist in their work. This rhythm is so unique. By seeing a so different kind of work, you can identify this is work of Picasso. Extreme different example is the next slide, please. Now you see this is also work of Picasso, and it is one of the masterpiece, but one of the most simple work of art. Just cycle seat and the cycle handle. And the photography is also done with such a beautifully sense of rhythm that it is making the whole bison appearance. So simple. This is one example. Next. This is another master of rhythmic drawings, Henry Matisse. You can see how tree is transformed into so rhythmic, very minimalistic lines. Next. You see the different music of it's like that is why they call sculpture frozen music. This is another work of very famous European sculptor Henry Moore. This is another kind of visual rhythm, rhythm formation, visual arrangement. There are various ways we can describe the same thing, whether we call it rhythm or structure. This Alexander Calder, American. Next. This is another very important sculptor. You can see, especially I have chosen works which are very rhythmic in their nature. a very famous sculptor, Tony Craig. Next. You see, this is another very contemporary, very well-known sculptor in the West. It's a wall. It's a very long wall which goes toward in between the forest and the landscape, goes under the water and comes out, and it harmonizes. So these are various forms of art. These works are called site-specific work, and this is by Andy Goldsworthy. Next. So you can see in visual art various design and shapes and colors and rhythm and how they are forming from very heavy material, stone, bronze, to very temporary material they use. It is just Andy Goldsworthy works in nature. He lives in the forest and he uses different leaves and flower petals of various seasons, and he just makes small works. And it is very time limited. Mostly the slides remains. This is another work. Next. See how his sculpture is in sync with the rest. These are called environmental sculptures. So it's using the same material of the nature and just intervening, and how it is almost like a jugalbandi with the nature. Next. Now I have come to the Indian section, and this is a founder teacher of Shantiniketan, Acharya Nandalal Bose. And these are very famous, his works called Haripura posters. So you can see these are very rhythmic, very quickly drawn works, and they are mostly inspired by also a folk tradition of potter painting of Bengal. Next. This is again, and this is also by Nandalal Bose, and these works are on the Constitution of India. These are his illustrations on the Constitution of India. Is there original copy, and he painted himself with his some students in Shantiniketan. Next. Now this is a work of a very renowned artist, Ram Kinkar Baij. And you can see, his rhythm and Nandalal Bose rhythm, each artist's personality and his rhythm are reflecting in their work. His works were very structural, very dynamic, and you can see whether it is drawing or in sculpture, they reflect that kind of thing. Next. This is again a work of Ram Kinkar, a very famous sculptor, will call. This is going a little fast. Oh, sorry. This is the work of Rabindra Tagore. Yeah. You can see Rabindra's work, so rhythmic in nature, so lyrical. And his works started, from his writing, from his doodles, and then those the movement of doodles and the rhythmic shapes and forms led to his development of his drawings and his paintings. Next. Yeah, this is a landscape by Rabindra Tagore of Shantiniketan. You can again see a different mood and different atmosphere, and very, very form-oriented landscape. You can see again, whole arrangement is so rhythmic landscape. Next. Another master from Shantiniketan, Vinod Bihari Mukherjee. Shantiniketan also known for mainly Shantiniketan has always given emphasis to design, structure, the rhythm. These are the hallmark of Shantiniketan. It's a lot of emphasis is given on the structure and design. So most of the Shantiniketan artist works, you can see this thing, that very strong construction. This is also landscape of Shantiniketan by Vinod Bihari. Next. Another very renowned Shantiniketan artist, he was our teacher also, Somnath Hor. And he was a renowned painter and printmaker, and then he moved to sculpture, and he used to work directly with the wax plate. You can see with very little bit of intervention, the movement on the plate, and he created this sculpture. Very rhythmic, very expressive works. Next. Another very renowned artist, our teacher, Professor K.G. Subramanyam Manida, we used to call him Manida. So you can see his works, I don't have to say anything because they are so strong images reflecting the rhythm, design, harmony. It's not only the form, line, and also color balance. Everything is, it's like a visual symphony. Next. K.J. Subramanyam, you can see there is no difference between structure, design, art, visual art. And that is what another aspect of Shantiniketan is, that they don't discriminate between art, design, and craft. These are all interlinked. They are all in sync. And then whichever requirement is, if it is somebody's designer, he can use same facility for his work, and visual artist or sculptor can use the same thing for his works. Next. Yeah, this is again K.G. Subramanyam, glass paint. This is glass painting. Yeah. Next. So, as I said, art or music or any form of the creative activity really leads to your happiness, and that happiness gives you a kind of energy and strength that you can really work till very late of his age. So this work is done in Shantiniketan by K.G. Subramanyam at the age of 85. He hand painted the whole building, and it was his homage to Shantiniketan. And so he did on his own this whole two-story building painted by him at the age of 85. So that is what art can bring, a kind of happiness that you can do such kind of thing. Next. Okay, so now I am coming quickly to my work. I am at disadvantage, showing some great Western masters and Indian masters, and then I am coming at the end showing some of my work. So pardon me if I'm. So these are some drawings, my drawings. It's a watercolor, and most of these drawings are done during this pandemic time. So this was also kind of exercise, which this was a difficult time. You are confined to your house for a long period of times. When I'm doing it, so it's like it's not obvious objects. I'm seeing it's like introspection and am I expressing in my works. So you can see these are very intimate drawings done during and a different kind of rhythm you can find in these works. Next. This is also done. It's a mythical animal, and I don't have to describe to you about the rhythm. You can see what is visual rhythm in various forms. And these are also done during this pandemic time. Yeah. So you can see this is another work. Again, it's a kind of you are confined within a small space, and it's a real, unreal, abstraction, and many elements together. So it is very intuitive. These works are very intuitive, and when I use the word intuitive, that is basically you are doing something with you're finding kind of rhythm and spontaneity and expressing your idea and your works. So this is another work. Next. This is another work. It's all imaginary portrait, and you can I don't. Sometimes in these works, especially, I'm showing to express the rhythm of lines, and it starts from any one line to two lines, and it develops from there. So it from one line triggers to another line, and another line triggers to another line, and then whole image develops. So if you go see the finer things, whole thing is just play of lines. Next. Another imaginary cityscape. Yeah. Next. Yeah. Next. So I hope you people are getting the sense of visual rhythm, what I'm trying to express, that these things are just flow and play of line and color and shape. And through that, you are creating images. And this whole process is very soothing, very relaxing, and especially it can work almost like a therapeutic for you. Next. This work I did in South India. There was a very old coal mine, and we had a workshop there. And you can see, this symphony of lines and flow of lines, and the deep cavity, and there was a big lake. So this whole thing, though it is a landscape, but if you go deeper into it, you can see it's just play of line and shapes. Next. Yeah, this is another work. Though I'm a sculptor, I'm known as a sculptor, but I love to do all kind of practices, painting or drawing or, printmaking or installation. So this work I did in a workshop in Thailand, a place called Krabi. It's a beautiful island and waterscape and the big mountains coming. And after seeing, I've just visited there and then I created at home at the workshop place. Next. Yeah, these are two drawings of both are, it's a different form of drawings. And you can again, construction, the design, the rhythm are the core of these works. Next. Walking the path. Next. This project was a very interesting project I did with one of the professor of North Carolina University, United States, John Jika and myself. And it was a kind of work. He came to Shantiniketan, he visited my studio, and somehow he liked my works. And then he proposed me that he would like to do a kind of a joint work together and create some works based on Shantiniketan. So I agreed, and he stayed at my place. So this is almost kind of a visual jugalbandi. He was a American living in America. He came to Shantiniketan. He found my work. I found his work very, very interesting, and we together made this body of works, which this exhibition was happened in America. So you can see it's a very abstract kind of thing where photography, drawing, and space all together. Next. So you can see, we were doing photography, then I was doing drawing, and then he was converting those drawings in overlapping photograph. And it's an abstract, and it's just kind of a visual music. Next. Same thing next. Next. Yeah. So you can see it's a Shantiniketan landscape, rural environment, village environment, and the drawings. So these are, there is an element of abstraction, and that element of abstraction brings a lot of involvement of the viewer to discover, find the meaning. So it's a kind of a play. There is a play into it. So it's like engaging the viewer. And this rhythm and shapes and form, I think the core of, if there is a good rhythm in your work, that engages the audience. Next. So the left drawing is mine. On the right side, the house drawing is John Jika's, and the photograph was John Jika's, and one photograph was mine. So it's all complex work put together with this new technology and drawing. Next. Same, another work. Next. Like some photographs, I will show you in the photographs also you can see the rhythm. Next. This is also seen in Shantiniketan where do this Chhat Puja. So you see in visual rhythm, in photography, in everything you can capture that, and that makes it different. If you put the right kind of arrangement in your photographs. Next. Next. So photography can also be a means of art. Next. Next. This is a kind of it is also a performative kind of a work in art also. So this is a kind of my own shadow. So there was an exhibition on the occasion of Gandhi's birth anniversary, and they asked artists to create a work. So I created this work is a kind of a digital work, but image is mine. I'm sitting there, I'm taking a posture and then taking a photograph and created this work here on. Next. This is also with this using same digital technology. I am taking my own photograph and putting it into visual context. Next. Yeah, this is one of the works I did in the United States, United Kingdom, Lady and the Lying Cat. It is there in Nimura International, so you can see this is another work. Next. Yeah, this is one large sculpture installation called Urvashi in Shantini. It's a life-size work, and it is a multiple-piece work. Next. So part of that work I was doing is a sculpture also. So this is just a drawing. So even in drawing, in each part, I'm just taking you through, so you can find a rhythm in drawing, sculpture, and relate. Next. So that drawing now converted into sculpture, and these are life-size sculpture. Next. And this is called the installation view. So this work is a multiple piece sculpture, and 3 pieces together makes one work, where the viewer can enter into the space and come out of it. So it becomes a more kind of an experiential sculpture. Yeah. Next. This is another work. You see, visual harmony or rhythm, whatever you call it. Just I'm taking you through to feel that. This is called Chess Players. It is again in the collection of National Gallery of Modern Art in Delhi. It's life size in fiberglass. Next. Yeah, this is again street dogs. It is they live almost like a parallel life in Shantiniketan, and they have their own world. So I created these 5 dogs. I call it Magnificent 5. And these are life-size work. On this work, actually, I got the national award. Next. So, as I said, I explore sculpture, allows me to use various materials. It depends on the opportunity. This is a steel sculpture. And next.
So, Professor, we have some time constraints because you have a next speaker.
Okay.
So
I will go through fast just.
Yeah.
Next. Yeah. Next. So you can see the steel sculptures with different material and next. We can go fast here. Next. Next. These are the drawings. And then go further. Next. These are the large steel sculptures. Yeah. Yeah. Next. Houseboat. Again, figure. Next. Next. So next. Vara Bajaj. Next. Yeah. Next. Just keep going like this. Yeah. These are different projects, different material. Next. Next. This is in Shantiniketan. Next. And this is one of the last work which I did in Calcutta. So anyway, this was a little bit of a very short time. So this whole thing a little bit got this thing. So just what I wanted to show is take you through the rhythms in visual art, in different shapes and forms of rhythm. And I don't have to say that this rhythm leads to your work and of course leads to your joyfulness and happiness. So that is what, if anybody has to anything to ask, you can ask.
Thank you, Professor. Mind-blowing presentation indeed. I am not such a, I am a dumb person who understand art, but always I had a question, why this modern art people so much appreciate, but I think with this lecture, I'll take it forward. It's so abstract and so intuitive, and you keep thinking. So you have so many things, I'm very much grateful to you. Personally, I felt very good on this presentation.
One thing I will say, any greater work of art has that inherent quality. You call it rhythm, you call it design, you call it structure. If that is there, it has the capacity to engage you. And that engagement, I am happy that you got engaged into these works.
Yes. I generally, I become, I focused on your presentation completely. I forgot about time. So thank you very much. So if you have some quick questions, because we have accidentally time because we have another presentation. So please go ahead with the questions. Otherwise, Professor will be available. You can send mails. I think most of you are spellbound with the display of the artistic intuitions and structures. So any quick questions? We have one or two max.
Sir, I want to.
Okay, Daipan, please ask. Sunila, okay, ladies first. Okay, Sunila first.
Thank you, sir. Good evening. Good evening. I'm from Singapore and I actually write. I'm a music therapist also. So I actually write, and your paintings has motivated me to write again on some of them, a poetry or some descriptions which comes to my mind. I think that is the power of rhythm which takes us forward to the next step, that it is not locked in the pictures, but beyond and much beyond, which needs to go on in imaginations and in chapters and in the times to come. So I will definitely keep in touch with you so that we can take your work to the next level of ordinary men, where the professor just said that he's dumb, but actually he isn't. But he was so engaged in your work, and I am doubly engaged in whatever you have done. I pray to Almighty that you continue your good work. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Then Daipan, please raise your question.
Sir, once English poet Keats said, if poetry comes not as naturally as the leaves to a tree, it had better not come at all. My question is there any positive correlation between nature and creativity? Or as an artist, do you believe that? And how important is this Jugalbandi, essential between human beings and nature? Is return to nature that important?
I think that is the most essential. As I said in the beginning, this whole exercise of mindfulness, you call it yoga, you call it music and art. This leads to you you brings to you in sync with the rest. And when you are in sync with the rest, there is no difference between you and the rest. And everything is part of your symphony, whether you are taking from this way or that way or from nature or leave. There is no boundaries. There is no boundaries. That is the beauty of it.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Rudrajit Thakur, who was asking sir, why all the Rabindranath's paintings are unnamed and most of them are aggressive. That's the question.
This is a very interesting question, because sometimes people, it creates a kind of a mood. Sometimes, when we give a title, sometimes title limits your artwork. So many artists choose not to give title, because title is just a lead towards understanding of your work. And Rabindranath's works are generally so intuitive. So I think sometimes it is better not to give them titles, so it makes you engage and find out the meaning into it. Titles, sometimes there are titles, but sometimes there are no titles. And I remember Rabindranath, there is a center called Dartington in England, and they have a huge collection of Rabindranath. And I found most of the works are there in their storeroom. So then I asked the director, why are you keeping this Rabindranath's work in the storeroom? So he said, not everybody understands. So my clerk said they get sometimes depressed by his works. So it is also, how much you are exposed to different kind of culture and language of art. So they could not understand that, so they kept it there in the storeroom.
Thank you, Professor. I
Thank
think
you
we
very
have
Just,
reached the end of the presentation. Any other queries can be taken off offline. So we have another speaker. So thank you, Professor, for this mind-blowing presentation. God bless you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Mr. Patnaik, Professor Patnaik. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Fully finished.
Professor, now this Swami Sahajanand's lecture is there, or it is? You
Yes.
said it is the last.
Yes, Professor, he has joined.
Okay. So Pranam Maharaj, are you there? Yes, he is there. I think Maharaj, can you switch on your video?
Sir, namaskar. Yes, yes.
Yeah, Pranam. So I'm with great delightfulness and happiness I introduce my ex-student and now my guru, Swami Sahajanand Giri Maharaj. So he has he comes from a very modest family in Odisha. So from Jagatsinghpur. So then he did an engineering, then master's MBA in the US. Then he had a job for some time. Then he left for monkhood, and he is now a monk. He's preaching Kriya Yoga in the international arena. So there are many people who are getting motivated by him. This Kriya Yoga is basically a meditation method, very age-old meditation method, which is mentioned in Yoga Sutra Patanjali. So the very old traditional meditation technique he is preaching now. So I am just handing over to him to preach, to tell us about this every moment bliss through conscious rhythmic breath. So thank you, Maharaj. So please go ahead. Podium is yours.
My pranam to all of you, and thank you for giving me an opportunity to be with you all. I'll do a prayer invoking the spiritual masters within. Om Sadashiva Samarambham Shyamacharana Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Ishvaro Gururatmayete Murti Veda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshina Murtaye Namaha. So thank you, sir, and that was little more than what I am. And thank you everyone, my pranam, for giving me an opportunity to be with you discussing some ideas. We'll start with some concepts that is very fundamental to ourselves. And each and every moment we seek that. So when I first saw the discussion topics which was related to happiness, happiness in Sanskrit has been translated as sukha. A fundamental question arises in our mind that irrespective of culture, tradition, why everyone is seeking happiness, which is natural, but then why? This is the first question we ask, that why we would like to find happiness and not the opposite, which is unhappiness or dukkha. So we'll discuss that. The second thing we'll discuss is that, is happiness enough? If we get what we want, does that make sense to us? And the third thing we'll discuss is how to get it. Like, whether it's something to be found or something to be understood. So our discussion today would be based upon mostly yogic scripture, especially Yoga Sutra, because I come from the tradition of yoga. So happiness, as I mentioned, is translated as sukha. Our master Lahiri Baba had said, sukha is su means uttama and kha means space, which means that if our awareness remain in space, then we truly realize what sukha is. However, that is not what we understand by sukha. Our sukha or happiness is generally limited, very fragile, and it is time bound, of course. And I'll give an example I heard from Swami Dayanandji. He said, think about a happiness that we get from regular activities. Let us say drinking a cup of coffee. He said, can you think of how many things need to come together for this coffee experience to happen? First, the coffee must be available. It must be available nearby. I must have adequate amount of resources to procure it. Then my sense organs, especially I should not have tongue blisters to have coffee. I should have time. So when we put all this together, the different elements to enjoy coffee, it becomes very fragile. And he said, look, a certain sense of happiness is coming from something which can be disturbed at any moment by any disturbances. A small disturbance can change the course of this enjoyment. So sukha is very, very limited. And the most important part, the yoga says, is that the sukha that we seek through this medium, which is called through outside or enjoyment, eventually starts giving us pain. So that is why in the scripture, this sukha has been downplayed, this happiness has been downplayed, or it has been presented as a complete aspect. So in the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna has called this Atyantika Sukha. So Atyantika Sukha means that which is so complete that further desire or further happiness is not sought. So Sukham Atyantika has been said in the Bhagavad Gita. In the Yoga Sutra, the word corresponding to Sukha has been used as Anuttama Sukha. Anuttama Sukha means, Uttama means the best happiness available. Anuttama means that which is far beyond than that as well. So that the Yoga Sutra speaks about Anuttama Sukha. Yoga Sutra says that Anuttama Sukha can only come through contentment, which is a critical understanding of how happiness should be sought or understood. That only through contentment, far beyond happiness can be realized or understood. In Taittiriya Upanishad, there is I went over it, there is a calculation that how much happiness we have, how much happiness certain other beings have. And it is said that unless somebody has proper knowledge or realization then this happiness would not be experienced at all. So whatever we experience, it will go away and it will start giving pain. So in general Vedic philosophy or yogic philosophy, this sukha has been downplayed and it is replaced by another word which we all know. It's called ananda. And ananda is a very conceptual word. The word nanda is what loosely translates itself to joy. Now I was thinking what kind of example would be suitable. And this is an example that has been given by masters. Is that when we see a mountain, the mountain does not give us anything. Or when we see a beautiful lake or some nature, the nature does not come and say that, okay, I am going to give you something. But by the sheer presence there, we get some contentment. We can accept it as a joy. Ananda means, so Nanda means joy. Ananda means, actually is used when there is a all-around concept is involved. So when a joy is all around, then that experience would be called as Ananda. So if we somehow will come to that, the path, but if we somehow are experiencing joy in every aspect of life, then we can say that we have started experiencing Ananda. Every aspect means every aspect. That means whether there is physical difficulties, mental difficulties, whether there is day-to-day activities, problems or no problems, the person is remaining in certain level of joy or contentment. So this contentment is the critical aspect to experience Ananda. In the Yoga Sutra, Patanjali says that Santosat Anuttama Sukhalabha. He says that through the practice of contentment, and it is a practice as well, it is a state also. That means somebody can be content without realizing why, but somebody can, through some spiritual discipline, can practice contentment. And through the contentment, we can realize this all-around joy or all-around what we call as Ananda. In the Vedic scripture, the path of contentment goes like this. And this is fundamental to humanity. So that means irrespective of where we stand, this should apply to us. It's a principle. It says that each of us is constantly striving to have this. It says Atyantika Dukkha Nivritti Parama Ananda Prapti. Atyantika means complete or full. Dukkha means sorrows or any kind of difficulties. Nivritti means cessation. So we are continuously striving through our activities, through our thoughts, through our efforts, that we need to get away fully, completely from any kind of sorrow. And this is also sometimes is not voluntary also. It can be involuntary. So for example, if I am sleeping, I am in deep sleep, and my body starts spinning on one side, involuntarily I change my position because that particular posture is painful. So I'm constantly striving to stay away from sorrows, stay away from difficulties. Atyantika dukkha nivritti. Then the sage says, but that is not enough. Dukkha nivritti is not something we will be content with. So what we are striving for parama ananda prapti. So ananda we just defined. Parama ananda is that in supreme state of joyfulness is what we are seeking. So prapti means I want it. I would like to have it. The difficulty is that the masters and the scriptures say is this Paramananda cannot be achieved, or Ananda in a very great sense cannot be achieved. It is because contentment is not something can be achieved through any effort. Now, effort is needed to understand it, but then it would be a realization rather than any achievement. So the masters say is that the understanding this aspect, that contentment is not going to come from outside, is what they have defined as jnanam or knowledge. So knowledge is that which is called adhyatmika jnana or atma jnanam. Knowledge is that which would make me realize that this contentment that I am seeking needs to be understood rather than to be achieved. So an example is that let us say I want to be rich. For that I would start earning money and saving money or creating wealth. And let us say this is one path. The other aspect is just that I do not know that I am rich for some reason, and I am gathering information to be aware that I am already rich. The Gurus say that one we are seeking, which we call as Ananda, which is all around joy, and eventually to supreme joy, is not something to be achieved. It is something to be realized. And that is the difference, they say, that hence effort should be put in a direction of knowledge rather than direction of achieving things. And this knowledge in the yoga has been called as Viveka Khyati. Khyati means knowledge. Viveka means discriminative knowledge. So the Rishi says that somebody means all of us. All of us must find a way to light ourselves through this specific knowledge called Viveka Khyati, and thereby contentment would come, and thereby Ananda would be the byproduct of it. And even if we are saying that the byproduct of it, but in reality it is actually what it is. But nevertheless, for our analysis part, we can say that our effort should always be to gather discriminative knowledge through some methodology, which we will discuss a little bit. And through discriminative knowledge, contentment would come, some understanding will come, and that understanding or contentment would bring us the experience of bliss or Ananda. So now we we have figured out that knowledge is important. This discriminative knowledge are called Viveka Khyati. So then the idea is that why this Viveka Khyati is not there today? Is it something that needs to be gathered from outside? Or is it something that we need to inculcate inside through some methodology? Practically, it is both. So we need to gather something from outside, something needs to be practiced inside. But the spiritual concept, says Patanjali gave, he said, no, actually, whatever we are gathering from outside, or even we are trying from inside, both of them are doing only one thing. He calls it, both of them are purifying some aspects of our mind and taking the mind from state 1 to state 2. State 1 is called Malina Chitta, or mind affected by some impurities, and state 2 is called Shuddha Chitta, mind that has been purified. So in spiritual concepts, any spiritual activities we do, and it means any, whether we do chanting, whether we do rituals, whether we do meditation, whether we do yoga, or whether we practice a very moral life, like speaking truth, not hurting others. Whichever path we take, our whole and soul aim is to take the mind from state 1 to state 2. If the mind is not getting purified through any of these activities, then somebody should come back and reflect that why it is not done. So all our activities are focused to move the mind from a state of Malina or sprinkled with impurity and purify it through some methodology and bring the mind to a state of purity. The question is, how do we know that the state of purity is coming? There are several methods, says Gabe, in the Yoga Sutra. One of the things that is very fundamental is that the more pure the mind is, the more balanced it would be. And this is in the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna says that Samachitta. Samachitta means mind that is balanced, which means that a happy news is not making me too excited, or a sad news is not making me too depressed. Or even if I am getting excited or getting depressed, it is not staying long. So I am coming back to again that balanced mindset, which is generally visible outside as a calm person, calmness. Calmness not only from outside perspective, also inside. So the person is not running different kinds of thoughts within while looking calm outside. So that won't be considered as balanced state of mind. Balanced state of mind is calm inside and calm outside. There was one question when I studied this, a very fundamental question came to my mind. That our understanding so far has been that to achieve practical success in life, in professional field or in any other field, we need to have thoughts. And that's why we call thinking person, that's why we call thinkers. So if thought is so balanced, the person is calm within and outside, then how that's going to work? then literally the person is not thinking. So in the Yoga Sutra, the sage answers. He says, look, the thought that we say it is a thinking is basically is like dragging a thread, and through this thread more threads are coming. So that is why many times if we just observe something, suddenly a chain of thoughts start coming. And sometimes we do not know where it came from, how it came from. But sometimes we can cultivate it also. The sage said that creativity actually does not come like that. Creativity, the sage says, comes when the mind is much more calmer. And that is where inspiration, intuition starts coming to our state of mind. So when a person becomes more and more calm, the intuition and inspiration are more and more prevalent. That is what the sage says in Yoga Sutra. So to purify this mind, as I mentioned, several methods have been given to us. And one of the method, which is a very simple method and it has its own variation as well, is through rhythmic life or systematic life. Here systematic life means systematic life in each and every activities, which we call as being aware or being conscious of the activities. That can also be practiced as it is, like we can remind ourselves to be conscious. But it takes time and it's difficult. So the sage gives a methodology and he calls it, which most of us are familiar. It's called pranayama or breath control. Breath control is pranayama. Pranayama actually is not breath control in a general sense. Pranayama means controlling of the life within. And breath control is a methodology to do that. So that's why pranayama's exact translation is not breath control. So breath control is a simpler way that we can do, which will bring balance to life. So the sage says that if you bring balance to life, then the purification of the mind will happen. When the purification of the mind happens, contentment will come or santosha will come. When santosha will come, experiences of the bliss or realization of the bliss will come automatically. So a seeker, a spiritual seeker, actually all of us, nothing to do with spiritual seeker, anybody can do, is to find a way to bring balance to life through one methodology is breath control. Pranayama means expanding the life. So the Guru said expanding the life means expanding the heart. The previous speaker just spoke. He said through different methodology, we find that we are connected to the rest. That is actually what expansion is. Expansion means that I have expanded so much that I consider you as my own. So our expansion starts with myself, goes to family, goes to relatives, goes to communities, goes to country, goes to the world. This is how the expansion happens. That is why the more the heart expands, the more content we become. And the methodology of breath control exactly fits into this, that through this practice, this expansion of life can come to us. My Guruji Paramahansa Pragyananda says, what is pranayama? He says the art of using breath skillfully to bring purity or rest to the mind. I mentioned to you purity of the mind and I mentioned to you rest to the mind. Rest of the mind means calmness. So purity of the mind is calmness of the mind. And by implementing certain level of breath control, certain level of breath awareness and breath management in a proper way with proper understanding, can bring that calmness or purity of the mind automatically. It is like the example that generally we give is that when, suppose I would like to build some muscles and I go to a gymnasium, I don't understand how this muscle work, what are the tendons and all kinds of things. The physical trainer told me, he said, okay, sir, you just need to hold this and pull 10 times a day. Do it for 30 days and come back. And I start doing it, and after 30 days I see certain level of muscle development. Or after 6 months the muscle has developed more. Similarly, when we do breath control, the understanding or the purity of the mind happens automatic. We do not need to analyze the mind, or we do not need to fight with the mind to get this purity of the mind. So, to give you an example, suppose many of us have anger issues. We get angry for some reason and we realize that it's not right, but then again it happens. And we try to fight it. And especially when people say don't be angry, it actually makes me more angry because, well, I am angry. And then you say that don't be angry. I know that, but it's not that I am not able to control. The pranayama actually changes this concept. It says that, excuse me, that when the breath management is utilized, the ability of the mind to go to a state of anger or state of agitation would reduce. So that means even if the conditions are right for the mind to get agitated, the mind will not be able to agitate. And with a little bit of practice, this can be experienced. That those events or ideas, situations prompting me to act in certain ways is not able to do that because the mind has been taken to a state 1 to state 2. And this is the effect that we can have if breath control is implemented in our life. As you know, breath has 4 sections. Inhalation is very simple. Inhalation, exhalation, and there is a little suspension between these two. So when we inhale, there is a little suspension. When we exhale, there is a little suspension. So breath can be divided into 4 components. Inhale, suspension, exhale, suspension, and it rotates. Using these 4 components differently, any individual, irrespective of tradition, belief, faith, wherever we live in, using this 4 component, somebody can bring calmness effectively to the mind. And the beauty is that it is not, the calmness of the mind will not go back again. So that means it is a fundamental movement, even unidirectional. Any individual can do it. This is, in spiritual tradition, this is taught from gurus in a very systematic way. But I will tell you a very simple methodology that you can practice from now onwards. And it is from a scripture. It is called Nirgame. Nirgame means when the breath is going out. Pravesha means when the breath is coming in. Vayu means breath. Guru Lakshe Vilokayat means be observant of the breath, which is called conscious breath, breath awareness. Just by observing the breath would become systematic. Just by being aware of the breath would be rhythmic. Just being aware of it. That is why in deep sleep, if we, excuse me, in deep sleep, our breath is extremely rhythmic. It actually moves very clearly. If somebody measures the time, it would be exact time for breath 1 to breath 2. But in our activities time, it is not so. So that is why deep sleep is gives us a complete rest time, where activities time we are not at rest. So the Gurus say that as a starting point, practice conscious breath. Conscious breath can be practiced in different ways. I would give 2 methodologies. When the breath is coming in, there is a little friction inside the nostril. When the breath is coming out, there is a little friction in the nostril. The Guru said that be aware of friction and practice it. Keep some time away and practice it. One of our senior monk had advised us to do this. One of my brother monk did it. He said, observe the breath and practice it. Make a time for 1 hour. I'm going to do it and see what happens. He said, I start doing it. Then the question was asked, what did you experience? He said, he had a very beautiful feeling. He said that after practicing for some time, maybe 15-20 minutes, he felt in such a state that if somebody would have come to him and asked him anything, he said, I would have given him. That is actually the idea, that losing the idea of myself as a separate entity than the rest of us. So this idea that I am connected, or I not only am connected, only everyone is mine or I am everyone's, this idea will come automatically through this breath awareness. So one way of practicing is to be aware of the friction of the breath going inside the nostril. This is one methodology anybody can practice. Another methodology could be that when the breath is going in, you can chant. If you believe in God, you can chant God's name, whether Krishna, Sri Krishna, Rama, Sri Rama, or any kind. Or somebody can just be neutral and practice love and peace while the breath is going in and breath is coming out also. Nevertheless, in either of this methodology, after some time, a rhythm will start forming in the breath. That is the gross manifestation of what we call I'm not able to find the word. It's basically the stability has come. So the gross manifestation of stability has come first through the breath, and then it will be felt inwardly, and then it will be visible in mind and activities. This is how we can experience contentment. The Guru say what this does is it changes the perception or outlook within. It basically, which means is that the mind has been modified or transformed, and critically, it removes obstacles that the mind gives it to itself, so within, and it also removes the obstacles that we face outside also. How it removes the obstacles outside, I would leave it to you to experiment. It does, in my experience. how it will remove obstacles inside is something that you can experience after a little bit of practice. So with this, this was more or less on the understanding we have got from scripture.
Thank you, Baba. Pranam. So any questions? We can have some questions here. So please ask some questions. Either you type or you come in audio.
Sir, may
Yes,
I?
please. Yes, please go ahead.
Sir, I would like to say to Swamiji that I'm extremely thankful to him for the beautiful talk he presented. And I would like to sing 2 lines just to explain what he said and written by me. Can I?
Please go ahead.
In the Kama rest the ocean. In the Kama rest the ocean. In it I sail in a boat of mine. In it I sail in a boat of mine. I know I will reach the divine. I know I will reach the divine. Shanto Muni Roshanto Shago Shishagore Bhashani Tori পৌঁছে যাবে তোমার দ্বারে পৌঁছে যাবে তোমার দ্বারে in the Kama rest the ocean. গান চলছে, আমি জাস্ট 2 লাইন গাইলাম. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. It was beautiful.
So beautiful. Any other questions, please?
Sir, I have a question.
Please go ahead, please. You introduce yourself and have questions.
Sir, I'm Palak. Thank you, Swamiji, for your session, for the wonderful session. So I have a question that, so when we practice any spiritual discipline, so the understanding towards life and death becomes so profound that we understand the profundity of life and death. It sometimes it is happening with me that it creates anxiety of losing your loved ones, and you're always thinking about death. So is it the part of a spiritual growth, or is it something that we need to work on?
Ma, can you ask again, please?
So I'm asking that, so I am into a practice of chanting. So with this practice, so earlier, so I have never thought of death and life in a profound way that, becomes, so I'm becoming more aware of, my mission in life and death. So the limited time span I have, so it is happening that I'm always thinking of death, maybe for the people around me, there are fears, there are anxieties. So with this practice, it should happen the opposite. But so I'm getting more fears and anxiety.
Now I understand. My understanding on this one was that you'd be surprised. Personally, I went through it 15 years ago. I don't know how you are experiencing it, but I went through it very deeply. That every time I will go to bed, I'd close my eyes. A thought will come that maybe I will not open my eyes anymore. So that bothered me, of course. I said, why? I mean, and it started suddenly coming to me. That basically it felt that I am sleeping and I will not wake up. And the death can come anytime. So I asked my Guruji about it, and at that time Baba had given me, he said that chant a mantra he gave me. So I chanted it. It went away, and my fear of death reduced from then onwards. So my thinking, I mean, I'm not suggesting that I know exactly. My thinking is that what you're going through, you would reduce your fear of death going forward.
Thank you.
That means it is a part of the journey. Thank you, sir.
That's what I feel. Yes.
There are two questions which are typed here. One is Daipan and one is Gokul Mutiji.
Daipan, Swamiji, my father is
ill health since youth, which makes me he's unhappy in spite of being financially stable. Could you suggest some remedy? That is the first question.
Okay. Well, Daipanji, I mean, maybe you can talk to your father and mention this breathing technique we talked about. The beauty of this breathing is that as I gave that example of muscle building, without we realizing it, so he can like put it like 2 minutes timer and say that I'm going to, if he believes in divine or God or any, can just take every inhalation can take God's name, every exhalation can take God's name, or inhalation can take peace, exhalation Shanti, 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 like that. Very likely within few days, a sense of calmness would start manifesting in him. That's my understanding.
So
Thank you so much, Swamiji.
Next question is Gokul Mutiji. Maharaj, are Yama and Niyama prerequisites for asana and pranayam? Are there dangerous people taken to asana and pranayam without Yama and Niyama?
Yama and Niyama is fundamental to life. If you look at, for example, Yama is ahimsa, satya, asteya, aparigraha, brahmacharya. Let us say, Sri Ramakrishna said, he said that all the yamas can be taken away and satya can be, he said, satya thak ishwar labhave. Yama and Niyama cannot be taken away from life whether somebody practices yoga or not. It doesn't matter which tradition we come from, whether we are atheists, agnostics, or whatever we are. Yama and Niyamas are fundamental to life. That is why they are called Te Sarvabhauma Mahavratam. That means applicable to each and every individual, irrespective of. There is no way somebody can avoid Yama and Niyama. Somebody can, we are not able to practice it fully, but cannot be avoided.
The next question is Samruddha. Why are human beings not a part of ecology? All life systems support each other, but human beings do not contribute and only depend on the ecology. How would you spiritually view this?
I do not know. Why it is so. I think part of it is because other beings, and this is what our understanding that we have got from gurus is that it's like a tool that has been available to human being, which we call as intellect or decisive power. The decisive power does not exist in other beings. For example, I am hungry. I can eat. That means that my faculties are running. My tongue is okay. My stomach is okay. Nice food is available. But still I can make a decision not to eat. Question is this faculty available to other ones? So for example, a lion is hungry and nice meat is available. Will the lion not eat? I think that maybe because of this faculty, and when it is not properly utilized, is what we are not properly harmonized to ecology. That's what my understanding is. But I would like to think about it.
Thank you very much. Again, another question from Gokul Mutaji. Maharaj, when the mind becomes pure, does knowledge comes by itself from within, or does the knowledge comes from outside, from a guru or Sastra?
No, outside and guru, the knowledge from outside guru or Sastra are hints only. So knowledge doesn't actually come from within. Actually, within is only knowledge. It does not come. That's what the spiritual teachers are telling, is that, whatever we call it. So they say that, which actually I forgot to mention, is that what we seek is what we are. So whatever we are seeking, for example, here it is happiness or bliss, is the what we are. So But practically, knowledge comes from within. The scripture, the words of gurus, everything else is hints only.
Very nice questions. Any other questions? If there are no other questions, I will ask one question to Swamiji. That I will ask about meditation. See, meditation is a part of life. Now it has become so popular all over the world. Everybody tries to meditate. Either they have learned it formally, or they have practicing it, looking at some books or TV channels, whatever. Pranayam, breathing, meditation, this has become a part of life. Even people in medical science, doctors are advising to do the breathing, etc. So what you suggest? Suppose one person is doing meditation without any proper guide, but just learning from here and there, some guides or some TV, or somebody goes to a master. Then if somebody needs a master, how to find a good master? So these are the two questions.
So that's a beautiful question. I personally think that I have gone through it up to a certain extent. So I will tell my experience, and I would request you to analyze it and put it in context that you feel comfortable. Meditating, learning from books is not something very helpful. And that is because, now it's not that it is impossible. It's not that. Anytime that we work on the mind, using the mind, then we are actually going through some risks. That is why invoking self-conscience when I am actually tempted to do something is a very, very difficult methodology to control life. So it is helpful that you accept somebody or you take guidance from somebody. Then the question is that whom to take for guide. First thing is that especially in modern world, you don't know who is right, who is fake, and all kinds of things. So I will take example of like teachings of a great master, Paramahansa Nigavananji. I will tell what he said. He said, to whom you should take guidance? He said, you should take guidance, especially spiritual guidance, from somebody in the presence of whom, or by looking at whom, or by reading that person, you get inner inspiration and inner peace. So just by looking at that individual, whether the person is in body or not in body, or by reading that individual's words, or coming across the teachings, fundamentally, some inspiration, intuition, and peacefulness will come out of you. And when it comes, you know that you can follow that person. And of course, as Sri Ramakrishna said, that you should test your guide in day and test your guide at night also. He said that your guru should be tested at day and tested in night also. I don't know how much time I have. I'll take 1 minute to give this example. Swami Brahmanandji, Sri Ramakrishna's disciple, Akal Maharaj, at that time was a young man and sleeping with Sri Ramakrishna at night. They were at night and they were sleeping in the main hall. And Srima, Mother Sharada Devi used to live in Nahabad at that time. It was not very far. Rakal Maharaj got up in the middle of the night and did not see Sri Ramakrishna. He immediately thought that Sri Ramakrishna is visiting his wife. Now, he is in struggle because his belief is that Sri Ramakrishna considers Mother as Mother Saraswati. So his struggle he is going through. He does not know whether he should go ahead, check it out, or he should lie down and control this thought process. He is not able to do anything. He is at the door. Sri Ramakrishna started coming from another direction, which was Panchavati, from the riverside. Sri Ramakrishna came and immediately told him. He said, Rakal, you have not done anything wrong. Guru should be tested in day and tested in night as well. So that should be done. But that can be done only when I have the visibility or I have the availability of the Guru day and night, or at least sometime. So the first experience, my request would be, say whoever appeals you, that person can be taken as a temporary guide at least.
Thank you very much, Maharaj, for your wonderful talk. I think very logical and very conclusive about meditation. So we are very grateful to you for this session. And if anybody has any questions, you can post it later on and you can get the answer. I think Professor Patnaik, have you come to the end of the session?
Yes, yes, we have come to the end. Thank you, Baba. Thank you, Guruji, for a wonderful discourse. Pranam.
Pranam. May thank you, sir. Namaskar.
Namaskar. Pranam to all. Jai Guru. Bye bye. God bless you all. God bless you. Have a good day. Sorry, good